$0. That's the monthly utility bill on a 10 by 12-foot test room built in the Arizona desert in 1967, and it's the same $0 bill on the full-sized house that came after it. No compressor, no refrigerant, no furnace clicking on in the middle of the night, just water, sealed in plastic bags, sitting on a metal roof with a set of insulated panels that slide back and forth depending on what the sun is doing. Notice that year, 1967, because in a minute, you're going to find out why it matters more than the invention itself. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what the system is, how basic physics makes it run, and how you could build a scaled-down version yourself for a few $100s. Picture a house in the desert Southwest, the kind of place that sits in a hot, dry climate zone, where the sun batters the roof all day and the temperature can fall 30 or 40 degrees the moment the sun goes down. That kind of swing between day and night is exactly the fuel this system runs on. A chemist named Harold Hay had spent years in India studying how people kept buildings livable without machines, and when he came back to the US, he started testing an idea with an engineer named John Yellett. Cover a roof in water, insulate it during the day and summer, expose it at night, and reverse the whole cycle in winter. In 1967, on a stretch of land tied to Arizona State University, they built that 10 by 12 test room to see if the physics actually held up outside a chalkboard. Compare that to what a typical American home is paying right now just to stay livable. A single central air conditioner runs somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 installed before a single kilowatt gets used. Add in a furnace or a full HVAC swap, and you're looking at $10,000 to $20,000 more. If a homeowner tries to get off the grid entirely with battery storage, that's another $8,000 to $15,000 on top. Utility bills alone run $200 to $600 a year per major appliance, year after year for as long as the house exists, added up over 20 years. And a typical American home spends somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 keeping its indoor temperature where it wants it. That's not a purchase, that's a subscription. And the industry built it that way on purpose, not through some hidden plot, just through decades of selling equipment that has to be replaced, serviced, and fed electricity forever. Here's the part that's actually strange, and it's not a conspiracy, it's a market gap. By the mid-1970s, Hay had a full-sized version of the system running in a real occupied house in California. And it wasn't some fringe experiment. The Department of Energy funded passive cooling research built directly around the Skytherm system through the late 1970s, and the results got published in a peer-reviewed journal. A researcher named Philip Niles measured how the house performed with an actual family living in it, through both a heating season and a cooling season, and the place stayed comfortable, without a furnace or an air conditioner running. That's a documented, funded, published result. And yet, 50-plus years later, you cannot walk into a Home Depot and buy a Skytherm kit. No major builder offers it as an option. It never got translated from a working prototype into a mass market product. Even though the operating cost is about as close to zero as a house can get. Nobody buried that. Nobody had to. It just never got promoted because there's no recurring revenue in a system that, once built, needs almost nothing from you ever again. If you want to keep following stories like this, subscribe to the channel. It helps keep Buried Fix running. And now, on. You're probably thinking this sounds too simple to actually work, or that it only works if you live in a desert. Both are fair. The physics itself isn't complicated. Water holds more heat per pound than almost any common material, which is exactly why oceans change temperature so much slower than deserts do. Put a few inches of it on your roof, and you've built a thermal battery bigger than anything you could buy off a shelf. And you're right that it performs best in a dry climate with a big day-night temperature swing, because that swing is what recharges the water every 24 hours. In a humid, cloudy climate, it does less work, and nobody serious claims otherwise. But even in less ideal conditions, that same roof pond still blunts a huge share of the heat load. A house would otherwise be fighting, which is why Niles' field study on the Atascadero house is still cited in engineering literature on passive cooling today. This idea is a lot older than 1967, though. Long before Hay ever picked up a wrench, the Pueblo builders of the American Southwest were doing something similar with thick adobe walls. Mass that soaks up heat all day and slowly gives it back at night, keeping the swing between day and night from ever reaching the people living inside. Adobe doesn't move like Hay's insulated panels do, but the underlying principle is identical. Use a heavy, slow material to store heat, and let time do the work that a machine would otherwise have to do with electricity. Hay basically took that same centuries-old idea, swapped thick walls for a thin layer of water, and made the whole thing controllable by sliding a cover back and forth. Different material, same physics, thousands of years apart. Let's get into real numbers. Water holds roughly 1 BTU of heat for every pound of it, for every degree Fahrenheit you raise its temperature. That's about 5 times more than the same weight of dry soil and far more than air, which is why a swimming pool stays warm long after the air around it has cooled off. 8 inches of water spread across a roof weighs somewhere around 40 pounds per square foot, so a modest 400 square foot roof pond is holding roughly 16,000 pounds of thermal mass sitting directly above the living space. That's storage on a scale no off-the-shelf battery gets close to per dollar spent. On a good day in a dry climate, that pond can absorb enough heat to keep the rooms below it in a comfortable range. Engineers in the field still describe this as landing near that 72-degree comfort band that ASHRAE's own standards are built around today, without a single watt of electricity going toward heating or cooling. Most channels at this point would sell you a course. I'm doing the opposite. Here's the complete build, scaled down to something you can actually put in a backyard shed or a small flat-roofed outbuilding, rather than your whole house, since retrofitting an occupied home structure is a much bigger project. You'll want heavy-duty UV-resistant pond liner or livestock tank liner, the kind sold at Tractor Supply Co., or a local farm co-op, sized to your roof area with extra for overlap. Rigid foam insulation panels come from Home Depot or Lowe's, cut to slide on a simple track system you can build from scrap lumber and cheap casters from Harbor Freight. A metal roof deck underneath the water, corrugated steel roofing, again from Home Depot or a local supplier, conducts heat far better than shingles or plywood ever will. You'll also want a simple manual pulley or small garage door style motor if you want it automated. Both easy to source secondhand through Facebook Marketplace or a local scrapyard. Build the frame first, install the metal deck, lay and fill the liner with water to your chosen depth, then mount the insulation panels on their track above it. Test the sliding mechanism empty before you ever add water, because once that pond is full, you don't want to be fighting a stuck panel. Most backyard builds like this don't touch the structure of your house, so most counties don't require a permit for it. But the moment you're talking about putting this kind of weight on an actual roof, that changes. The International Residential Code has specific load requirements for exactly this reason, and a roof built for snow and rain isn't automatically built for standing water. Before you scale this up to anything load-bearing, call your county building department. It's a 5-minute call that costs you nothing and protects you from a much more expensive mistake later. These details I held back because they only matter once you've decided to build. Tilt your roof deck just slightly, even a 1/4 inch of fall per foot, so the liner never pools unevenly and stresses one corner of the seams. Leave a proper drainage path for overflow during a big rain, because a pond with nowhere for excess water to go will find its own way out, usually somewhere you don't want it. UV stable liner is worth paying extra for. The cheap stuff cracks within a couple of summers under direct sun. And if you're in a colder climate, plan your insulation cycle around your coldest month first, not your hottest one, since freezing is the failure mode that actually costs you the whole system. Picture the house at the end of a July day. Outside it's 96 degrees and the light is doing that flat, heavy thing it does right before sunset. Inside it's holding right around 72. There's no hum from a compressor, no vent rattling somewhere in the wall, just quiet, the kind you don't notice until you realize you're not hearing anything mechanical at all. You can smell the faint mineral scent of water off the roof through an open window. And on the kitchen counter, next to the mail, there's no electric bill with a cooling line item on it this month, because there was nothing to bill for. If you like stories like these, the next video is already on your screen, one you won't want to miss.